This feeling inside, we can't deny. And we will always be together, forever strong where we belong.
In a quiet corner of Manila, where the night breeze carried the soft hum of tricycles and distant laughter, two siblings sat inside a small room that had seen more struggles than celebrations. Laura, the older sister with gentle eyes, traced her fingers across the wooden body of her old guitar. Beside her, Evan, her younger brother, leaned back against the wall, tired, hopeful, and holding on to dreams bigger than the tiny space around them. The light flickered above them, casting a warm, uneven glow that made the room feel both fragile and familiar. On the floor lay scattered notebooks, faded sheet music, and reminders of the many nights they had spent chasing a dream that still felt far away. Yet, amidst everything they lacked, one thing remained constant: their courage to keep trying. Outside, rain whispered against the window, as if the world itself was giving them a moment of calm. Lara looked at her brother, noticing the exhaustion hidden in his quiet smile. She felt the weight of their family's battles resting on his young shoulders. Their mother worked double shifts in a bakery. Their father, once a local singer admired by many, was bedridden now, his voice trapped behind an illness that stole more than just sound. And in this stillness, an unspoken question settled between the siblings. A question that had followed them for years. A question that felt too heavy for their young hearts. How far can a dream go, when it starts in a place where people say dreams don't belong? Lara tightened her grip on her guitar, as if refusing to let go of the only thing that connected her to hope. Evan closed his eyes and listened to the soft rhythm of the rain, imagining a future where their music could reach beyond their street, their city, their country. They had no stage. No mentors. No guarantees. Just two voices born from struggle, and one belief, that maybe, just maybe, their songs could carry them somewhere new. And on that quiet night, without knowing it, the morning after that quiet, rain-soaked night, the siblings woke with a familiar routine, simple, slow, and shaped by the challenges they tried not to show the world. Lara prepared a small breakfast while Evan carefully tuned the guitar their father once played. It was old, scratched, and held together by tape in one corner, but to them, it was sacred. It carried the sound of the home they were trying so hard to protect. Their father used to fill the house with music. His voice was warm, steady, and full of stories. But when illness took that voice away, it also took something from their family, something invisible but heavy. Lara noticed how their mother's smile dimmed over the years, how Evan stopped talking about big dreams, and how the house grew quieter, as if afraid to be hopeful again. So the siblings made a silent promise. If they kept singing, then maybe the music that once kept their family alive could return. Every evening after school, they practiced in their small living room. The walls were thin, but their courage was thick. Sometimes neighbors paused outside their window, listening to the soft blend of their voices. Lara's tone carried warmth, while Evan's carried depth. Together, they sounded like two souls telling the same story. Rehearsals weren't perfect. Some nights they were too tired. Some nights their voices cracked. Some nights they wanted to give up. But then they would remember their father's eyes, how they shone every time he heard them sing, even now when he could no longer speak. He would tap his fingers gently against his blanket, as if cheering silently. Those taps were enough to keep them going. One afternoon, as the siblings practiced a new harmony, their mother walked in holding a printed paper with trembling hands. It was an online audition announcement for America's Got Talent. She placed it in front of them, her tired face softening into the smallest smile they had seen in months. They looked at each other, breath caught in. Weeks passed quickly after they submitted their audition, but the siblings never stopped practicing. They rehearsed in the same small room, surrounded by the same tired walls, never imagining that a single email would soon change their world. One warm afternoon, Lara checked her phone and froze. Evan looked up, confused, until he saw her hands trembling. They had been invited to perform live on America's Got Talent. Their mother covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Their father, unable to speak, blinked repeatedly, tapping his fingers rapidly on the bed, his way of clapping. It was the closest thing they had seen to excitement in years. And just like that, the siblings were packing their simple bags, 2 sets of clothes, a few snacks, and the old guitar that carried their dreams. The flight to America felt unreal. They had never left the Philippines before. They stared out the airplane window, watching the clouds move like slow waves, wondering how 2 ordinary kids from Manila could end up flying toward one of the most famous stages in the world. When they arrived at the AGT arena, their breath caught in their throats. The building towered over them, bright lights cutting across the sky, giant posters of past winners staring down at them as if reminding them how small they were. Inside, the air buzzed with voices, cameras, and footsteps from every direction. Performers from around the world rushed past them, dancers stretching, magicians practicing, singers warming up. Lara clutched the guitar a little tighter. Evan wiped his palms on his jeans. For a moment, they felt like children lost in a place meant for giants. They were led backstage, where rows of contestants waited in long hallways lit by LED strips that seemed to stretch endlessly. The floor vibrated with the rumble of thousands of people already seated in the arena. Every sound, every light, every movement amplified the fear rising inside them. But in that overwhelming noise, something quietly grounded them. Lara glanced at Evan. Evan glanced back. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The promise they made at home, the promise to carry their father's voice farther than it had ever gone, was enough. When the stage doors finally opened and a wash of bright light spilled toward them, their hearts pounded in unison. 2 small silhouettes. 1 massive arena. And a dream bigger than anything they had ever known. As the stage doors closed behind them, the siblings stepped into a world that felt unreal, vast, glowing, and filled with 1,000 curious eyes watching their every move. The arena lights stretched far above like stars, making the siblings look even smaller in the enormous space. Lara held the guitar close, as if it were the only familiar thing left in this new universe. A soft hum of anticipation rippled across the crowd. Evan took a careful breath. His heart felt loud, as if the whole arena could hear it. Lara positioned her fingers on the guitar strings, her hands trembling slightly. The judges' table stood just a few feet away, glowing under the spotlights. And at the center of it, with his arms folded and eyes sharp, sat Simon Cowell, a man known for his honesty, his high standards, and for rarely being impressed. Yet the siblings didn't look at the judges. They looked at each other. Because that had always been enough. Then the first note left Lara's guitar, soft, gentle, floating into the silence like a whisper of home. The sound traveled across the arena, warm and fragile. Evan joined in with a low harmony, his voice deep and steady, grounding Lara's melody like an anchor holding a drifting boat. Something shifted in the room. The audience leaned closer. The judges straightened in their seats. Even Simon's expression, usually firm and unreadable, softened just a little. As the verse unfolded, their voices wove together like 2 threads of the same fabric. Each line carried the weight of sleepless nights, of sacrifices made quietly, of a dream protected even when the world didn't believe in it. And then the chorus arrived. Lara's voice rose, clear and full of emotion. Evan's harmony wrapped around hers, creating a sound that felt far bigger than 2 voices. It was the sound of every hardship they had lived through. The sound of every hope they refused to let die. Before the siblings even reached the final line of the chorus, something extraordinary happened. Simon Cowell stood up. Slow. Deliberate. Almost stunned. The crowd exploded into applause, rising to their feet like a wave. The arena shook with cheers, but the siblings didn't stop singing. They kept going, pouring every piece of their hearts into that moment, because this wasn't just a performance. It was a promise fulfilled. A promise carried all the way from a tiny room in Manila to the world's biggest stage. When the final note drifted into the air, the arena didn't fall quiet, it roared even louder. Waves of applause rolled across the room, crashing over the siblings like something almost unreal. Lara lowered her guitar slowly, unsure if her hands were shaking from the performance or from the overwhelming feeling rising inside her chest. Evan blinked rapidly, as if trying to anchor himself to reality, afraid that if he moved too quickly, the moment would disappear. The judges were still standing. The audience was still cheering. And Simon, still on his feet, watched them with an expression rarely seen on his face. But in that giant moment, the siblings did not feel like stars. They felt like two children who had once dreamed quietly in a cramped room in Manila, and somehow ended up here, embraced by thousands. Backstage crew members clapped as the siblings walked off, their breaths unsteady, their eyes glassy with disbelief. A staff member handed them water, but neither could drink. Their hands were too full, with emotion, with gratitude, with something they couldn't name. Behind the curtains, the applause continued. Even muffled by walls and heavy drapes, it felt warm. It felt like hope finally answering them back. Lara thought of their mother, who sacrificed sleep and comfort for her children's dreams. She imagined her watching the performance from a small screen, tears falling quietly as she pressed a hand to her chest. Evan imagined their father, sitting in his bed, tapping his fingers rhythmically against the blanket as if applauding with all the strength he had left. For the siblings, this moment was not just success. It was healing. It was validation. It was love returning to them in the form of thousands of cheering voices. As they walked down the long backstage hallway, lights flickering softly overhead, they felt something shift inside them. Not fame. Not pride. But a deeper understanding. That dreams do grow, even in the smallest places. That stories do travel, even from quiet Filipino homes to the world's biggest stage. And that sometimes, the world listens, not to perfection, but to heart. The siblings didn't know what the future would bring. They didn't know if they would win, or how far the journey would take them. But one thing was certain. Their lives had changed forever. Not because Simon stood for them. But because their voices finally reached the world, and the world stood back.